Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Rachel Guo. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Eddie. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you here.
Oh, good to see you too. I'm so happy to have you on this podcast, and I'm going to tell our listeners why. So first of all,
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been working with Rachel. She's been helping me with my marketing, and I think she's a genius. I mean, the way that she structured that marketing program is absolutely incredible. We're going to go over it, and I'm really happy. I mean, I'm really excited to share it with our listeners because I'm all about systems, and you have a beautiful system on how to get leads from LinkedIn and that system actually works. So you are an entrepreneur. You grew your business tremendously within 2 years to several $1 million business from scratch by using your methodology. And you've been helping so many clients do the same. And before that, you were not, I love your story. So I think, if we can hear a little bit of your story of how did you actually become an entrepreneur and how do you start your business? And then we'll dive into the strategy and what do you actually do to help businesses get leads using LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I'm happy to share that. So again, thanks for inviting me to be here. So I'm really happy to be here. So I guess just to answer the question to start off, what did I do to get started? So I would definitely call myself as someone that's like an accidental entrepreneur. So I grew up and never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought I would, graduate and then I would work at a large company. So I have security and I can make good money there and I can climb the corporate ladder. That's what's being taught to me because I'm from like a pretty traditional Asian family. So I think that's kind of the dominant thought growing up. So I never really thought that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's just, so accidentally I happened to be one. So what happened was I graduated, I got into finance, working for an investment bank in New York as an analyst doing some mergers and acquisitions work. And then throughout the way, what I did was two things. First is I actually used LinkedIn to facilitate, actually set up a lot of coffee chats and informational interviews to essentially network myself into getting that job because the bank didn't really come to our school to do targeted recruiting in the first place. So that was number one. And I was very familiar with doing outreach on LinkedIn, and that was very successful. And a lot of my, I would say schoolmates and friends from school would reach out to me and be like, hey, Rachel, I see that, this bank didn't really come to our school to do recruiting, but you still got a job for them. So how did you do it? So then I would start to basically share my experience and process for using LinkedIn with them. So that kind of really spread in my school. And once I started working at the bank, a lot of students would reach out to me and say, hey, can you maybe teach me or coach me on the side to share your experience of getting into that bank? So that's kind of my starting point. I was doing some tutoring and also some essentially free coaching on the side to help my my friends from that school to kind of essentially use the same process to get into other banks. So that was kind of on the side career coaching. So that's my starting point. And then I moved on and I did my 2 years at the bank and then transitioned into working in a tech company on the West Coast. And then I updated my LinkedIn profile. So I initially started working in finance. And then without having any previous tech experience, I transitioned into working in tech. And I was using the same experience, essentially the same process of reaching out to people on LinkedIn and to set up informational chats, coffee chats, and to do networking to transition. So once I kind of updated that experience, a lot of people noticed that and they were like, oh, hey, Rachel, I want to do the same thing. I want to quit my job in banking. I want to quit my job in consulting. I want to get into tech. Can you coach me on the side to show me how you did it? So I then sort of grew my career coaching business on the side. And that was really the starting point. So yeah.
Amazing. And so then you quit your job and decided to do this full time.
Yeah, so well, that was actually also another, I guess, another twist. So what happened was my career coaching business was actually doing really well on the side. So at one point, I think roughly around 12, 13 months of actually launching that part-time coaching business on the side, I was making around like 20K, sometimes 25K per month. So that was actually already significantly more than what I was making full-time working in tech. And while I was doing career coaching, I also kind of met a lot of other coaches, mostly other career coaches who tend to be a little bit more, I guess, more senior, older than me. And to see I have this huge influx of appointments and I was also working a job. So they were saying like, oh, so how did you do it? Like, how is this possible? Like you we're just starting out, you're kind of relatively new coach. So I'm sure like the referral is not offering for referrals because referrals take a long time to build. So I started to basically help them out, kind of have like 1 hour consulting sessions with them, show them my entire automation strategy, my entire LinkedIn process to help them to get more clients. So that kind of spread the word a little bit initially. And then I got just more people reaching out to me and say, hey, I wanted to learn a little bit more about your LinkedIn process. And eventually, I just realized that this is a great business opportunity. And I also love doing this. Like compared to career coaching, I feel like I'm more interested overall in the business and marketing and sales category. So I was really passionate helping those other career coaches. So I then just pivoted and then launched my business full time from there.
Amazing. Just amazing. And then you grew your business and you have employees now and you have a whole system. So this is such a success story. And you really, you are living and you did what you actually teaching others. And then you are teaching that knowledge to others, to other entrepreneurs so they can be successful as well. So let's talk, I love systems. I love processes and procedures. And you have an amazing system for reaching out, basically outreach on LinkedIn. But before that, before any system that we can extend how it's being implemented, there is always a higher level strategy. So let's talk about the strategies that you took with LinkedIn, because, I'm sure that some listeners, I had the same doubts. I go like, okay, so right now it's LinkedIn, tomorrow something can happen. It can be another platform, right? It's not like we can't be invested so much in one platform because the algorithm can change or this can change or that can change, but the strategy is really what works, and that is what's giving the security that it will continue to work because the fundamentals that you are using are not going to change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think the reason that I liked LinkedIn so much is because of the audience that I work with. So we don't work with anyone. So again, I mentioned before, because I was a career coach before, kind of switched over to business coaching. And I started helping career coaches in the beginning. Like LinkedIn to career coaches is absolutely like a no-brainer, right? Like we all know that anyone doing anything career related these days just goes to LinkedIn, right? Like you apply for jobs, you do networking, you find people to do coffee chats, like it's all happening on LinkedIn. So for my initial, I guess like the core audience I started out with, which is career coaches, LinkedIn is just no brainer because that's a professional platform. And then I kind of grew and expanded and scaled and started working with other people, mostly also coaches and consultants, but I guess how if I were to identify them, it would be professional coaches and B2B consultants. So professional coaches, meaning anyone that's working with a professional. So leadership coaches, executive coaches, mindset coaches. B2B consultants is, consultants like you, right, looking to land a corporate contract. So for those people, for those two types of audience, LinkedIn is also obviously kind of, the go-to platform. So I think just for our audience, we're looking to either work with professionals or land, a gig with an organization. LinkedIn is known to be the platform for people to go to do business with, right? So that's kind of the easiest and the fastest place to get results. So yeah.
Good. So now, okay, so that's a strategy, but that's a strategy of who is your ideal client or the ideal person or the ideal public basically that you're reaching out to. Now, what do you do? Like, what is the rest of the strategy on how to engage?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So our main strategy here is outreach. So organic outreach on LinkedIn. So just to help the audience define that a little bit better. So when we say outreach, what we mean is like, it's pretty straightforward, right? Like you go on LinkedIn, you find your ideal client avatar on LinkedIn, who do you want to work with, and you reach out to them. You just simply reach out to them, you send them a direct message, talking a little bit more about your offer, introduce yourself, and see if there's a need, right? If there's a need from their end. If there's a need, if they're interested, then you set up a call and then you have a conversation, get to know what their challenges are, and then you can close a percentage of those conversations into paying clients. So that is really kind of the high level strategy that we recommend here. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, if we have listeners that are listening to us right now and go, yes, but yes, I hear you, Rachel, but what is that but? Like what are the main concerns that you encounter that entrepreneurs have that actually stops them from reaching out and using this one as a tool in order to acquire new clients?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you're right, Addie. There's always a but. So there's like a million different formats of saying that but. But I would say if I were to rank them, the most common ones, the top ones, the first one is, hey, this sounds good, but I am not sure if outreach is going to work for me because I've tried it before. So for that, we have heard it, over and over again. And typically, the reason that it's not working for our past clients is because they're not doing it in the right way. So a lot of people will say, of course, most people say that, but specifically it's because of the three things. First one here is because of their targeting, right? They're not really targeting the right people. So for instance, if you're selling a 20K package and you're targeting, a 20K like leadership coaching package, and you're targeting people who just started working 2 years ago. So then of course they don't really have the budget to invest, right? Because they're not that senior yet. So like choosing who to target, and like for instance, like how senior they are is sometimes one indicator that you're not going after the right crowd. The second reason here is your messaging, right? So right now we see like LinkedIn typically, I'm sure you get messages like that, like just very surface level, only focus on talking about who they are, like what they're trying to push, their agenda. So not really focus on you and your needs and what do you ultimately want to attain. So, and also not really personalized, right? You can see that it's like a mass messaging sent to everyone. So you don't feel like you are really being paid attention and you're really that special as a prospect to those companies. So the second thing here is your messaging is not that personalized. It's not very specific. It's really not value driven, talking about what you can specifically deliver for them in return, right? So of course, those messages are typically not that enticing. So they're not going to get people to pay attention or really, respond or do kind of book a meeting with you. So that's the second thing, which is the messaging is typically not that great. And the third thing here, I think is most important, which is volume, right? So the beautiful thing about outreach here is you can actually do a reverse engineering of the math funnel and then basically work, at the bottom here and figure out, okay, I want to, for instance, make 30K. And in order for me to make 30K, I need to land 6 paying clients a month. So if I need 6 paying clients a month, and then depending on my average booking rate, let's say, industry average 1%, I need to be reaching out to 600 people, right? Like per day or per week or whatever the time frame is. So the beautiful thing here is you can just reverse engineer and calculate initially for your outreach campaigns, how many people do you need to reach out to? And you can automate that. So what I'm trying to say here is the third point here is volume. So most people, they're sending out 5 messages a day, and then no one is responding to them, and they're not getting 100% booking rate or a positive response rate, and then they give up and they say it doesn't work for me, right? So the beautiful thing here is figure out your math, and you have to do it in volume to match up your right, like what you have calculated. to really deliver the results. So I would say overall, it's those three things combined. Yeah.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. Makes total sense. And if you apply that correctly and use the correct execution of the strategy, it does work. Now, would you recommend somebody, and that's okay, I guess I'm leading the question, but I would just say it, in terms of like for me, what I like to diversify, right? Because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? I mean, there is a room for referrals. And if you have successful clients, I mean, that
Referrals
like
are always
working
the
with
best,
you, referrals is
right?
always the best.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is always the best.
Definitely.
And I recorded a great interview with Alice Tang. She's the expert at like your network is your net worth. And she gives this amazing story of how she built her network, and she gets constant referrals. And if you apply that, you're going to get constant referrals. But you want to also be able to reach more, and you want to reach outside of your referral network and build your referral network, because those that are going to join are going to be satisfied clients. Then you're going to have an expansion of your referral network, right?
Oh, like absolutely. It's definitely one of the added benefits. I'm of the philosophy that if you want to get anything, you have to go out and actually get it. Like they're not going to fall into your lap, right? So like for referrals, by the way, like absolutely agree. Referrals is one of the best lead source. If you can get enough of them, and that's enough for you to grow your business significantly 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, then that's awesome, right? That's ideal. That's perfect. The problem here is most of us, like, we don't have that many referrals. So then you have to look at, okay, how can I actually diversify the lead flow and have a consistent and scalable lead source, right? That is predictable, that can help me to grow my business. So I think the best strategy here is really doing outreach on LinkedIn because of the few reasons I just mentioned. The first one is it is really scalable. Right, like you can basically figure out, okay, how many clients you wanted to kind of end with this month, and then you figure out the initial outreach of how many people you need to reach out to. So that's number one, and you can easily scale that by like 10 times, 20 times, no problem. The second thing here is really automation, right? You can automate the whole thing, and you don't really need to be manually doing all of that compared to content, right? Like I know posting content right now is like a really popular and sometimes by default choice for a lot of coaches and consultants to get new business. But content, right, like takes like an hour or 2 every day. You have to research about the content topics, like write about them, publish them. Once published, you have to engage with the people who comments and all of that, right? It's like it's a lot of time. But for outreach, it is really automated, so it's not as time consuming.
So when you say automated, it's not like the content is automated, because I think what is different with your method than others, it's not like we're just sending the same message over and over again. You really personalize it. I mean, the email that I got from you was very personalized. It looks like somebody, and I know because I know your method, somebody actually looked at my LinkedIn profile, was interested, commented on it, and I go like, wow, somebody's paying attention. Then it started the conversation. So I guess the automation, let's talk about the automation. So what parts do you actually automate, and what parts are important to actually not automate, but use a personalized line and actually a person doing it as opposed to artificial intelligence?
Yes. So I guess like 2 things, right? The first one here is what parts are automated. So we typically recommend the sending, right? Like you can, so what I like to automate is the rest of the message of the first message, and then the following sequence in follow-up. But for the first message, the first 2 or 3 sentences, the intro line, I do recommend to personalize them, right? Because people feel like, oh, you actually looked at my profile, you have done studies on me, you have research about me, right? So it makes the prospect feel special, and then they're going to read the rest of the message. So that's essentially what I would recommend to personalize versus not personalize. Now, to answer the second question though, if you want to make sure the first 2 to 3 sentences, the intro line, are being personalized, what's going to be the best way to do it? So we do recommend 2 different strategies. The first one is what I personally do, and add a year following that. That's what I would personally recommend, which is you get appointment setter or a VA, right, to basically write it for you. And then we will give you the different angles, the different templates for them to follow. They just need to pick and choose one template to use, right? So they're not really writing everything from scratch, but it appears so from the prospect's perspective. which is great. So that's going to be the first method. The second one here is we're looking to add right now, but essentially you can also use a third-party automation software to generate those personalization lines, and then you pick one out of 4 or 5 that you think is best fitting. So that's kind of the two main methods that we're using right now.
Absolutely. Any other advice, like for right now to our listeners, if they're thinking, well, should I do it? Should I not? Like, what would be your final advice to them in terms of like moving them over the fence in terms of like, yeah, let's try this outreach on LinkedIn and see how it works for us?
Definitely. So I think the first one here is I would ask you to look at like, who are you targeting? Are they on LinkedIn or are they on some other platforms? So if your target market is business related or corporations or professionals, then yeah, definitely LinkedIn. But if you are selling a consumer offer, right, like relationship coaching or something that's really geared towards the general public, just consumers in general, then maybe consider a different platform. So for instance, like Facebook. So what I'm trying to say here is the first thing here is you have to know your offer and your audience and know where they're at, and then approach them in a targeted way, right? So that's number one. The second thing here is then you have to consider like, what is your goal? Because your strategy is derived from your goal, right? Like if your goal is just to maintain the current status quo and you don't really have any big plans to scale it, and you maybe for instance you're currently getting 2-3 clients and you're just looking to get 3 to 4 clients a month, so that's a relatively small gap, then I wouldn't necessarily look into for instance, leveraging outreach to aggressively scale it. So maybe looking to your current method, right? Maybe you're getting most of your clients from referrals, and think about how can you make your referral network better, right? So that's kind of that. But on the other side, if you do want to scale it and grow it in sort of a big way, then outreach is definitely going to be the easiest and also most time efficient strategy to use. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Rachel, you've been such a wealth of information. If our listeners want to know more about you, get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah, for sure. So you can just do 2 things. Either you can email me and I can share the email with you, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn. So just Rachel Guo, and I should be the first person that comes up, and send me a message there. So yeah. And
you should go to Rachel's profile on LinkedIn just so you can see how to set up a perfect LinkedIn profile. So it's Rachel Guo, and I think just to observe what you did with your LinkedIn profile and how you set it up, so it is totally gives information and is very informative and people can understand exactly what you do. Visit her profile and follow her and leave her a message if you'd like, but definitely I recommend that you do that.
Awesome. Yeah, you're more than welcome to do that. Thank you so much, Addie. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you again for being a guest on this podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.